Texas family says they're turning to their faith after the stabbing death of a 17-year-old high school student.
Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony did not know each other.
Karmelo Anthony was sitting under Frisco Memorial's pop-up tent at a track meet Wednesday morning.
He said, well, you don't belong here. You don't go to Memorial. He had a Centennial tracksuit on.
Anthony grabbed his bag, reached inside, and said, quote, "Touch me and see what happens." Anthony stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away.
My son is not here anymore.
Today we're going to be talking about the murder case of Austin Metcalf by Karmelo Anthony. Now, this unfortunate murder has gotten a lot of press and, God, for a lot of wrong reasons. Two high school kids, both athletes, both of their lives ruined. One because they've passed away, and the other one because he took the life of the other kid. And people across the internet are bringing up some crazy theories that they know nothing about.
I move that I be disbarred.
Like castle doctrine or stand your ground law, the legal right to self-defense in Texas. Something they know nothing about. And obviously, because of these two, you got people on both sides of the aisle race baiting and grifting because one's one color and the other's another. But I'm going to be clearing up all of that for you and describing how a detective would go and investigate this scenario and what Texas law has to say about all of this. Was this a crystal clear case of self-defense, or was this obviously a murder? Now, I've got things that other people don't. Because I waited a little while and took my time investigating this, I've got the police report and the original statements from the officers that responded on scene. Now, the video of the incident, which from different news stories state that there's several videos, have not been released yet, and I don't expect those to before the trial gets going. And once the trial gets going, I'm sure then some of the edited or maybe not edited video will come out. But before I break down the entire police report written by numerous officers who took down statements for witnesses, a word from this video sponsor. But on a serious note, have you heard of Raid Shadow Legends? Raid has been a top-tier game for over 6 years now, and it has an endless amount of content, and it's still going. With AAA graphics on your PC or your mobile app, you can better enjoy Raid's far advanced PvE mode. I personally enjoy opening each and every shard to see which champion I get. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And ever since downloading Raid, I can tell you one thing for a fact: your toilet time will never be boring again. And because Raid is turning 6 years old, they're giving you a birthday present. Oh, how nice. You're gonna get the Epic Hero Zargala for free, plus other goodies worth a total of $60, just to help new users kickstart their gaming experience. And if you use the Anniversary Edition promo code Monkey King, or one of the other 3 champions by using their codes, but you can only use one. And those 4 champions are only available with My Angry Cops link or QR code within 48 hours after downloading the game from the link. But choose wisely and stack up their skills amongst the others in your champion's horde. And what better way to celebrate Raid's 6th anniversary with a grand masquerade? And with spring being here, it is the time for carnivals. Raid's bringing the world of Telleria to life like never before. You wanna see something cool? Here's my AI transformation with the Seducer. No, that wasn't my idea. Raid said give them a photo, and they made me the Seducer. I mean, obviously. So if you haven't started yet, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description or scan my QR code to get anniversary bonuses via only my link, where you'll get the starter pack worth $60 and an Epic Zargala. And make sure you use code Monkey King to get a Void Legendary Champion, Sun Wukong. So join me, and if you want to join my clan, you can do that too. Let's get into this so that we know the facts as they lay out from the police report. And feel free to pause and check out all the individual documents that I put up one at a time as I go over the pertinent information from each officer's statements within this report. Let's start off with the school resource officer that's located in the Staley School where the stabbing took place. The school resource officer, Cortez, was able to put the suspect in custody and the first on the scene. At least that's the way that it looks like from the report. All the following officers detail what they did and how they all kind of correlate and corroborate each other's stories. But let's get into SRO Cortez's statement. Cortez hears stabbing call out over the radio, runs onto the track and field where 2 students point out the location of the victim. Cortez sees the Memorial High School tent with people around it, under it, and by the bleachers. Someone points out the suspect, black male, gray hooded sweater and dark Nike pants. Cortez tells the suspect to put their hands in the air and gets the suspect in custody. Suspect makes statements to Officer Cortez once detained. Now these statements are critical, and I'll tell you why they still will be used in court even though there weren't any Miranda rights read. So what did Karmelo Anthony say? Well, I was protecting myself. He put his hands on me, and when SRO Cortez goes over the radio to say, I have the alleged suspect in custody, Karmelo responds with, I'm not alleged, I did it. And later on, while Cortez and another officer walk Karmelo to the patrol car, he makes another statement. He put his hands on me. I told him not to. Is he going to be okay? Now in New York State, we call these 71030 statements based on New York Criminal Procedure Law, CPL 71030. Now each state has its own 71030, but a 71030 is this: a spontaneous utterance or statement, meaning that I, as an officer, while effecting an arrest or going about my job, run up to somebody who may or may not be involved in a crime, but let's say that they are. They're the suspect, and they start saying things like, yeah, I did it, or I only stabbed that once. Well, those statements can be used in court even though the Miranda rights aren't read. This is important, all of you internet sleuths and true crime people. Miranda rights do not need to be read to you when you're arrested. I know, mind-boggling. The amount of times you've probably watched an episode of Cops and seen somebody say, you ain't read me my rights, you ain't read me my rights. Miranda rights are only read when the individual believes that they are detained or they are not free to leave and under arrest, and the officer, detective, investigator, whomever asks them direct questions regarding a crime that they may be implicated in. Does that make sense? So if I pick you up and I don't say anything to you other than you're under arrest, and then I throw you in the back of the car, everything you say jibber jabbing away at me in the back of a cop car can be used in court. Right? Something you don't learn every day. Now let's continue on with Cortez's statement. Cortez says that while being placed in the vehicle, there's blood on Karmelo Anthony's hand. Officer Cortez makes a note of it on their body cam. Hey, I see that there's some blood on the suspect's hands, which I think is great. I loved when I had a body cam. I loved talking to it like it was a person. I'm pulling this person over for this. Oh, wow, they're really swerving. Blah, 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 blah. Hey, man, you're really freaking me out. Please stop scaring me. Please stop scaring me. It paints a really good picture of how you're feeling when you talk to your body cam. I called mine Larry. Cortez transports Karmelo Anthony to lockup. They take away his clothes because there's blood on the clothes. They hold them in for evidence. And then that evidence in a bag is given to their evidence collection agency and submitted as evidence. Boom. Great job, Cortez. Now, I forgot to mention earlier, when Officer Cortez grabs Karmelo Anthony, Cortez asks him, are there any weapons on you? And Anthony says no. Pats him down. No weapons found. They do a better pat down later on. Still no weapons found. Significant, because the victim was supposed to have been stabbed. That's what this whole calling was, a stabbing. But yet the suspect doesn't have a weapon on them. Well, what does that mean, boys and girls?
You think we need to look for more clues? So do I.
Well, that means that that weapon is thrown somewhere and now we gotta find it. When you put that out over the radio, hey, suspect has no weapon on them. Hint, hint, other patrol. We should probably be looking for that thing. But let's move on to the next officer, Officer Ricky, Reese, R-I-C-C-I. I'm gonna go with Ricky.
Oh, Ricky, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Ricky!
Officer Ricky seems to be the second officer on scene and assists Officer Cortez. And most of Officer Ricky's statement backs up and supports Officer Cortez's depiction of what went on. But Officer Ricky also remembers a different statement that Karmelo gave while being led to the car with Officer Cortez. Officer Ricky hears Karmelo ask, could what happened be considered self-defense? Which we are gonna talk about later. In Texas, you have the right to defend yourself. Castle doctrine, stand your ground. We're gonna get into it, don't worry. Officer Ricky ends the statement by saying that he sees the frickin' blood on Karmelo's hands and decides to take photos with it with a department-issued camera. Good job. Evidence collection by everybody is fantastic. There's no film, it's only digital space. Take as many photos as you want. Next is Officer Otis. He adds a little bit more to the description of the suspect, says they've got a goatee and also short hair. that the stabbing took place at the visitors' side of the stadium, that the suspect was distraught and crying while being led away from the scene to the police patrol vehicle, that it starts to rain, and so that large tent that Officer Cortez describes as where the victim was and where the victim is, well, Officer Otis moves the tent over top of the victim and the people working on him in order to save any potential evidence. And because the rain and bad weather can affect evidence collection, takes out his camera, starts snapping photos of everything in order to document it before any changes are made. Brilliant. Witnesses tell Officer Otis that the suspect threw a knife, and shortly thereafter, other officers recover a knife in the bleachers, and that while it began to rain, he covered the knife with the tarp once again in order to protect any potential evidence. The murder weapon is a pretty integral part of evidence for said murder investigation, so good job. Officer Wetzel comes in and says he was standing there looking at the trainers giving medical attention to the victim. However, the trainers were saying that the victim was no longer conscious and had no pulse. Officer Wetzel's approached by a witness, and the witness says the following to Officer Wetzel: that the witness was sitting underneath the Memorial High School tent with their teammates. The suspect sat under the tent, but he was from a different high school, likely Continental High School. The victim told the suspect to move from under their team's tent. The suspect grabbed his bag, reached his hand in, and told the victim, "Touch me and see what happens." The victim touches the suspect, and the suspect replies with, "Punch me and see what happens." The victim grabs the suspect to tell him to move. The suspect pulls out a black knife, stabs the victim in the chest, and then runs away. The victim grabs their chest and yells, "Get help!" And the witness adds more information to the physical description of the suspect, that the suspect is in Continental High School clothing. Officer Fisher gets on scene, is confronted by two witnesses. One of them happens to be the victim's brother, and the other one happens to be a coach. The victim's brother is obviously too upset to talk, so he begins talking to the other coach that's a witness. The coach states that he was sitting on the bleachers underneath the high school tent, the Memorial High School tent, that everybody, including the victims, around, and then an unknown black male came up and sat underneath the tent with them. The victim tells the suspect, "Since you don't go to MHS, you've got to leave the tent." The victim and suspect go back and forth. The victim stood up and shoves the suspect to move him from the tent, and during the argument, the suspect reaches into a bag and keeps his hand in the bag, eventually stabbing the victim. We've got a couple witnesses that we've talked to already, and everybody's painting a similar picture. Officer Schultz shows up. Say that 10 times fast. Sees life-saving techniques being applied to the victim. Gathers witnesses' names. Separates them so that way they're not talking to one another, so that their stories remain exactly what they have in their head and not changed by anybody else's opinion or storytelling. Was told that the knife was thrown. Ends up finding the knife. Hooray! You found the evidence. It's the knife in the bleachers with Karmelo Anthony. Puts the tarp over the knife and then grabs a backpack nearby in order to weigh down the tarp so it's not blown away. But guess what? The bag that he grabbed is the suspect's backpack. The only backpack not from Memorial High School in that area of the bleachers. So what do we have? We have a bunch of stories and physical evidence now showing that one kid popped under a tent around a bunch of people he didn't know from someplace else and was told to leave. And then that resulted in the victim being stabbed. Officer Higgins, doing the best with the least, shows up. A witness comes up and says, "Hey, I want to make a statement. I saw everything." Higgins says, "Hold on 1 second," notifies detectives, and detectives take that witness away to give an official statement and get a little additional questioning in there. What else was going on? What else did you see? And then closes shop and beats feet out of there. Sometimes less is more in policing, baby. Now we've got Officer Craig, separates witnesses from the rest of the group, went onto the school buses holding all the other students from the area, and writes down and identifies over 24 other witnesses, to include another 5 or 6 coaches. So right now, just from these officers' fantastic statements that they were forced to write, and I know begrudgingly did it because, that's like an hour of typing or whatever BS instead of out doing the job. But so important. Because the picture we have right now from everybody, including witnesses, is that Karmelo Anthony, a member of a different high school, came to the visitor's side of the football field where the visiting team was all set up, sits underneath one of the visitors' tents, alone, not with any other people from his high school. He's accosted by one of the high school students from the visiting team, the victim, and says, "Hey, you're not with us or our group. You can't just sit underneath my tent. You need to leave." Karmelo Anthony says, What do you want to do about it? The victim says, you need to move. Karmelo Anthony says, don't touch me. You'll figure out what happens, and puts his hand inside of a bag. The victim goes over and shoves him away from his then gets stabbed in the chest, and Karmelo throws the knife, runs away, is apprehended by one of the patrol officers. People are rendering aid. They find the knife that was thrown. Witnesses are all saying almost the exact same thing, corroborating the story. But what the internet has done with this is immediately gone without all the information that we have right now, and started dictating that this was or wasn't self-defense. So join me today for a little bit of a law lesson on self-defense, according to Chapter 9 of the Texas Penal Code, specifically 9.31, self-defense, and 9.32, defense of another person. First, let's talk about the stand your ground law, also known as the Castle Doctrine, which basically says that you have no duty to retreat, that you're in a place legally, you have the legal right to be there, that you're not doing anything criminal, as in committing a crime, and that you haven't provoked the situation. You have the right to defend yourself. But protecting yourself with force and the use of deadly force are two different things. Ooh, force, deadly force. One could be a shove, a punch, a kick. Deadly force would be a stab, a shot, beating with a hammer. So let's talk about deadly force, because that's what we're talking about today, right? The stand your ground laws, the use of deadly force. Well, there are limitations when it comes to deadly force. There has to be reasonable belief that deadly force is reasonable and necessary based on the circumstances. That means that if somebody's yelling at you, I'm gonna kick your ass, you can't just pull out a 9 and shoot them. Pop, pop. Also, that means, get ready for this, fist fights. If somebody gets in a fist fight with you, it's very difficult for you to raise the level of force used from a fist fight to a deadly use of force. If I shove or kick you or punch you in the nose, that doesn't mean you automatically get to pull out a 9 and shoot me again. Another restriction is its immediate use. The threat that you are facing has to be happening now, in the moment. It can't have happened in the past and then you return and pop somebody because they threatened you with deadly force. And it also can't happen in the future, as in the speculative use of deadly force. I think he might use deadly force in the future, so I'm gonna pop him now. No. And once again, we touch on proportionality, which we talked a little bit with the fist fight. Already, Texas state law and a bunch of other states have made it so then if you get in a fist fight with somebody or somebody pops you once or twice, you don't get to go to your car and pull out a gun and shoot them. Lower use of force doesn't mean deadly use of force is authorized. Now that can change, obviously, and it's a per situation kind of thing, but you get it. I can't come up to you and say, let's go, and start swinging at you, and then you just decide, well, f it, I'm gonna shoot him. There's gotta be more to it than that in order for you to have the appropriate use of deadly force. Now that I've given you those descriptions of, the reasonable use of force, the use of deadly force, its restrictions, and also the stand your ground castle doctrine, here's my opinion and breakdown of what we've received so far from the police report and how we can apply it to these statutes. The defense for Karmelo Anthony is going to have a hard time trying to use the stand your ground law as a defense, specifically where it says that the individual can't have provoked the situation. Right, we go back to the police report. One kid goes to the visitor's side, where all the visitors are, where none of his teammates are, and then chooses to sit down underneath a tent of not his high school, surrounded by none of the people he knows. To which somebody says, hey, you need to move, and his immediate response is, touch me and see what happens, per one of the witnesses. That sounds, to me, an awful lot like somebody trying to start some with a group of people. If I'm at the beach and I have a tent set up and my family's in it, and a stranger comes over and then plops themselves next to my family, I'm gonna look at them like, what are you doing? Get away from my shit. Yes, I'm in a public space, but you're like in my shit by my family. Off. And if he goes, touch me and see what happens, well, that just looks to me like he's intentionally starting a fight with me. Why? I don't know. But in Karmelo's case, one could speculate that he wanted to start a fight with somebody, and that his intent may have been to stab somebody and use self-defense as a defense. Why do I say that? I know, because I'm a horrible man and I hate everybody. No! After he sits down and says these things, his hand immediately goes into his bag and starts fiddling around. Remember what we talked about when we said some of the things you can't do for use of deadly force? Speculative force? If you're sitting down in the bleachers under somebody's tent, they tell you to move, you say, touch me, you see what happens, and then immediately grab your knife in your backpack for the speculative force that they might use, you're already wrong. You're already amping up the situation and preparing to use deadly force when it's not authorized because guess what? Number 2, proportionality. If a kid's picking you up and tossing you off of a bleacher, that doesn't give you the right to use deadly force. Once again, it's a fist fight. You can't just stab somebody because you got in a fist fight with them. There needs to be something more. And here it's even less. No witnesses say that punches were thrown other than a shove or grabbing somebody to then shove. So no, deadly force is not authorized here. Not in the use of self-defense and not in stand your ground or castle doctrine. Unfortunately, what it appears to be right now, for me, looking at the police statements and also some of the witness information that's in those statements, is that this is full-blown a murder. Now, based on potential witnesses that might have talked to Karmelo Anthony before he went over underneath the high school tent of the high school he didn't go to with kids he didn't know, is what did Karmelo Anthony say to any of his friends before he went over there? Did he say anything to his friends before going over there? Like, watch this, I'm gonna start a fight. Because those statements from those potential witnesses, if they exist, if that even happened, would be pretty damning for the state of mind of Karmelo Anthony. Then you could possibly get premeditated murder. Now, some states call it other things, as not necessarily premeditated murder, but you catch my drift. One of the subsections of that murder charge would be that he intended to go over to that group of people to start a fight, maybe even to potentially stab somebody. And that then led to the death of Austin Metcalf. So there you go. A view from the policing world on what would happen during a criminal investigation from the police officer side, not the lawyers, but the police officer side of said investigation. Best way to support the channel is get yourself a shirt. Check out those shirts. Oh God, so handsome. POBs for people who do a great job, like all those officers. That entire department deserves a POB. Your note taking is immaculate. Your collection of evidence is amazing. You made it so then this entire case is see-through and transparent. This is why you do things the way you do. So then whenever something like this happens, nobody's looking at the police officers for doing a shitty job or being involved or being negligent. Great job. Cheapest way to support the channel is leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think he's guilty. Tell me if you think that I'm wrong. Tell me how you think that I don't know the difference between my ass and a hole in the ground. I'd love to hear it. And if you want this video uncensored with some additional content and breakdown, check it out on Pepperbox. And if you love cop stuff, Donut Operator's on there with uncensored cop videos. So if you want to see somebody eat some 556 to the face, that is on there uncensored. I will see you next time, weirdos.